صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وسلم عليك يا حبيب الله. قادری آستانہ سلامت رہے، قادری آستانہ سلامت رہے، مصطفیٰ کا گھرانہ سلامت رہے، مصطفیٰ کا گھرانہ سلامت رہے، قادری آستانہ سلامت رہے، مصطفیٰ کا گھرانہ سلامت رہے، اترتے 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 فاطمہ اجاگر نثار، اترتے فاطمہ پر اجاگر نثار، سیدہ کا گھرانہ سلامت رہے، سیدہ کا گھرانہ سلامت رہے، پر رہے ہیں جہاں سے یہ دونوں جہاں، پر رہے ہیں جہاں سے یہ دونوں جہاں، پر رہے ہیں جہاں سے یہ دونوں جہاں، وہ سخی آستانہ سلامت رہے، وہ سخی آستانہ سلامت رہے.
Jazakallah khair jaza to Hafiz Ridwan. Our first, I'm not taking too much of time today because we want to get into the discussion. So our first speaker for the session today, inshallah ta'ala, is Shaykh Faheem of Islamic Lifestyle Solutions, who is very, very well known throughout the KwaZulu-Natal region and in this country. He presents his program on Thursdays. He's also one of the co-founders of Islamic Lifestyle Solutions, and his speciality and his passion is the fourth dimension of Islam, or according to the hadith of Jibreel, which is about Ashrat al-Sa'ah, about the signs of the hour. And I think this issue is a very, very critical one, and he's devoted a lot of time and a lot of effort into researching this topic and enlightening us about the matter. And he's by far one of the experts currently on this topic, inshallah ta'ala. We are very pleased that he's here. We are very privileged that he's here. We thank him for his presence here this evening, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase his knowledge, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him success in both this world and in the hereafter. He's also published a book, Bidayatun Nihaya, which I have with me, which I'll show it to you now, the beginning of the end, which inshallah ta'ala should be available outside. It will be available outside. It's 275 rand. But it's an investment for yourself and for your families. And I've been through the book, and it's something that is essential reading for families, especially in this era. So the book is available outside. Invest in your families and invest in your akhirah by purchasing this book, but I'll announce about it inshallah ta'ala later on. Without much further ado, I'd like to call upon Shaykh Faheem.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. First of all, before I start and forget my train of thought, a kafir came to the Prophet ﷺ and says, "Oh Muhammad ﷺ, you are the most ugliest person I've ever seen." Nabi Kareem ﷺ said to him, "Sadaqta, you've spoken the truth." After some time, a companion of the Prophet ﷺ comes to him and says, "Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, I have not seen a personality more beautiful than you." Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Sadaqta, you've spoken the truth." The companions, bewildered by the two responses of Rasulullah ﷺ, said, "O Messenger of Allah ﷺ, the kafir said that you are the most ugly person. You said he is speaking the truth." And the believer said so, and you also said he's speaking the truth. What is, the hidden wisdom here? Rasulullah said that a believer is like a mirror. That whatever you see the reflection of yourself. And Hafiz Saab is being very kind to say, I am research, but that's just a reflection of himself. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for having me here. And we supplicate in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts our attendance. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. خلق السماوات والأرضين والصلاة والسلام على من كان نبيا وآدم بين الماء والطين سيدنا وسندنا وشفيعنا وحبيبنا وطبيب قلوبنا وعوننا وعيوننا وغوثنا وغياثنا ومغيثنا ومأوانا وملجانا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وأهل بيته وعلى من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلاما عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Let us all collectively with utmost adab and with true sincerity from the heart to recite durood loudly. Allahumma salli ala وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. Once more with immense and intense love for Nabi Kareem, recite durood loudly. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa ashabihi wa barik wa sallim. Salatu wa salamun alayki ya Sayyidi ya sahib al-taj wal mi'raj. Allah in whose name we begin. The eternal with no beginning, the everlasting with no ending. Peace and choicest salutations upon the cream of creation, Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wa salam. Respected mashayikh, respected ulama, they are some of our seniors here. And we hope and pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them long life and strength to continue the good work. Very quickly, as our officer mentioned, the program is an overview. And he is a master because he gave me so many things to give you an overview of. So I will be sounding, although we're in Durban, like the Gautrain, in order to get past the information. So I hope you will bear with me. Of course, you know, the subject which has been marketed quite well as seeing the Dajjal with two eyes. And we will try to explain a little bit more about this as we continue. Now, if you look at the background, I'm not sure if any of you, we left it there because I was hoping maybe someone who really sees with two eyes will be able to gauge what is in the background. And I hope maybe that your guesses are correct because that is the $1 bill. And the $1 bill, which has become synonymous with the term Dajjal and Antichrist, even with the Christian folk and the students of eschatology there. And the symbolism of the eye is something that is now globally understood as being synonymous. However, we're not conspiracy theorists. You don't see a security company that has, an eye symbol there. They all are the minions of Dajjal. No, that's what we're saying. But as we see the progression in the modern age, this symbol is becoming globally known as the symbol of those who are the followers and worshippers of Al-Masih al-Dajjal. So it's very important that we pay attention to what's happening in the background as always. Khair, our subject for today goes on, and this is a little bit of an overview. So I've been tasked with explaining to you the etymology or the etymological roots of the word Dajjal. Dajjal is a person. Dajjal is a hidden force. The socio-political, socio-economic concept of Dajjal as a global phenomenon, and of course some of the misconceptions. Now, just to show you yet again that the concept of the eye, and this all-seeing eye as they call it, it has even got through to places. If you look there at the middle, the emblem, which is the emblem of the police force of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And those of you who have gone, you will see that in the emblem, if you just look at it, even at a glance, it is very much symbolic of that eye that is there. Now, there are many people who have over the years asked, that does this mean that Dajjal has entered into Makkah, Medina? No. And the idea of understanding that will only be really unraveled when we come to terms with the concept of Dajjal as a person or as a being. But we'll go through that inshallah. But as always, I like to discuss some of the misconceptions, and there are monstrous misconceptions amongst Muslims when it comes to the subject of Dajjal. And this is why when Hafiz had told me the theme of the subject, automatically I was sold, because it was absolutely brilliant thinking on his part. Khair, the big question, does the Dajjal have one eye? Now, I've shown you a symbol of one eye, and I'm telling you that it is known as the symbol that is synonymous with Dajjal. But does Dajjal have one eye? Is he going to be a cyclops-like creature from the mythical eras of the past? No. If you're waiting for a one-eyed monster to walk on the road, or to stand at position of power to say, I am Dajjal, then we're living in a dream world. Then we are seeing Dajjal only with one eye. And so we have to first find where is the root problem. Why is it that when you say the word Dajjal to a Muslim, the first thing that comes to mind is a cyclops-like creature with one eye on the forehead? Now, by my understanding, and I could be wrong, that unfortunately we live in a time of such an influx and overflow of information with Mufti Google and Shaykh Facebook and Alama Twitter and so forth, that if you had to just go very quickly and type the word Dajjal and search a hadith, you're going to get the hadith in the English language. But when the person who has translated these ahadith did not leave footnotes, did not give a thorough explanation, it can lead you to go totally away from the actual context of the hadith. For instance, Al-Masih al-Dajjal, we say he is one-eyed. And when we search the books of hadith, for instance, in Sahih al-Bukhari, we come to the conclusion that the Prophet ﷺ said that the Dajjal is one-eyed. So Shaykh Faheem, Hafiz Fuzail, what is this problem with you people telling us we must see Dajjal with two eyes, when the Prophet ﷺ said that Dajjal is al-A'war? Now, when we do a hatchet job of translation, then we will get the wrong information. But in reality, al-A'war, even in the context of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Dajjal is blind in the right eye. In order for a description to say that he is blind in the right eye, intellectually tells us that he has to have a what eye? A left eye. And so the Prophet ﷺ is saying that he has two, but he's blind in the one. And then we can go on to the subject of, is this literal, is this allegorical of this blindness? But even in the hadith, the actual word of al-a'war means to become blind in one eye. In order for you to become blind in one eye, you must first have how many eyes? Two. So to clarify the first misconception, Al-Masih al-Dajjal is not a cyclops-like creature. He does not have one eye in the forehead. No, because we even know the hadith would say that there'll be letters written on his forehead for us to distinguish him between the believer and a kafir. How is that letter going to be in his forehead if there's an eye in the middle? So it goes against the intellectual faculty as well. It is a misconception which has come due to lazy translation and not a thorough research of the subject matter. Now, going into the first part, which is the etymological roots. And I'm no expert. There are ulama like my Maulana Uzair, Soofie, Hafiz Fuzail, others here, Maulana Amin as well, who have spent time, in the Arab regions, that Arabic, alhamdulillah, is wonderful. You should take benefit from them. But in the subject of Arabic etymology, it is indeed an amazing subject. It is, people ask us that of all the languages, why was the Quran revealed in Arabic? It's only when you begin to study the language, you appreciate the brilliance of Allah Azza wa Jal in His infinite wisdom, choosing as the final book a book of this nature, in the language of this nature, where the word itself also gives the definition of what it is speaking about. Subhanallah. So the etymology is a big part of studying the subject. We can't just go open the hadith and say, right, I'm going to read this story about Dajjal. You will not understand it to the best of the capacity of understanding without going through the etymology. Linguistically, the word Dajjal comes from Dajjala, and linguistically it means to deceive, to lie, to dupe, to cheat. You get the picture. These are all negative connotations and synonyms for the word deception. So linguistically, this particular description of the Prophet ﷺ, which he had given to Dajjal, is rooted on the concept of deception, without which you would never be able to understand the mission and the objective of Al-Masih ad-Dajjal. Now, another misconception, Dajjal is not his name. If you're waiting for now a two-eyed man to say, I am Dajjal, you wait for a very long time. But the Prophet ﷺ, in the subject of eschatology, which is rooted in futurology, he gave us a sort of title of descriptive characteristic nature, in order for us to, if we are looking with two eyes, to see the reality that goes beyond the external horizon. Now the exaggerated meaning, which is where it comes, is Dajjal as the great deceiver. So he won't just be like the guy who speaks a bit of white lies here and there and gets a few things done off his friends, but he will be a master. He'll have a master's degree in the art of deception. Now, just as an example of the usage of the word linguistically, which ties up with the mission of Dajjal from the Prophet ﷺ. In those days, if an Arab was selling a camel, and the camel that time was the Mercedes-Benz of the desert, right? We don't have time to go into why. BMW fans, I'm sorry, right? Khair, also BMW, okay, we'll give you benefit. I don't want to have people coming to me later. So, a person who's selling a car to you, consider it that way. An Arab who was selling a camel. Now, a camel is a living, breathing creature, and it also can suffer injury, fatigue, and so forth. It can also contract illness and disease. If a camel contracted a disease on its skin, and this is apparent, now the guy who's selling the camel or selling the car, and the car gets rust. So what you want to do? You want to make the most money. And those people who are dishonest, they do a cover-up job. Very quickly, touch-up job. So what the Arab man would do, he would take some tar, and according to some, like a lovely rug or a carpet, but some tar, he would smear the tar over the diseased area of the camel's skin. And then this smearing of something beautiful externally to beautify outwardly what is inwardly rotten, this is known as Dajjala. And within the etymological roots lies the very methodology and the mission and the objective of Al-Masih ad-Dajjal. Now, that is the linguistic understanding. Technically, in order to understand the subject, we have to go to certain ahadith. And the consistency of how the linguistic explanation of the Prophet ﷺ comes and fits in absolutely with the technical definition, you will now be able to understand that with a bit more ease. So what happens? The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned a hadith which is in Bukhari. Nabi Kareem ﷺ said, one night, while sleeping near the Kaaba, I had seen in a dream, I saw a man of brownish complexion, and the best of brown. This man, the description of the Prophet ﷺ is that he had long hair which fell between his shoulders. And this man, there was water dribbling from his head. We don't have time to go into why. And this man had his two hands placed on the shoulders of two men. And he was circumambulating the Kaaba. He was making tawaf. The Prophet ﷺ says or asked the question, who is that man? The response was, this is Isa bin Maryam. This is Jesus, the son of Mary. Who is who? The true Messiah. Not far behind him was another man. But this man resembled a kafir. We don't have the time again to go into who and why that particular kafir. And this man, his hair was curly. And this man, he had his one hand on the shoulder of one man whilst making tawaf of the Kaaba. And so I asked, who is he? And the response was, this is Al-Masih Ad-Dajjal. This is the false Messiah. Now, look at the consistency. If we look at the linguistic consistency here, Nabi Isa alayhi salam is the true Messiah, versing Al-Masih Ad-Dajjal, who is the false one. Now, what is Isa alayhi salam, the true Messiah? What is he doing? He's making tawaf. But he has long hair, which falls between his shoulders. And he has two hands on the shoulders of two men. Now, when we see the tawaf of Dajjal, he is circumambulating the Kaaba, but his hair is curly, not straight, not long. And whilst Isa alayhi salam had his two hands on the shoulders of two men, he has one hand on the shoulder of one man. What do we learn from this? That Al-Masih Ad-Dajjal, in something as significant as tawaf, which is part and parcel of the Hajj, he will go even, not literally for tawaf, he will go even to the depths of portraying himself as a true believer, to such a degree that you would judge him as a Muslim based on his belief. But if you look at him with two eyes, you will see the subtle differences in his impersonation. And these subtle differences, when juxtaposed between Nabi Isa alayhi salam and Al-Masih Ad-Dajjal, become quite clear. And for those of you who enjoy the subject, do not study Al-Masih Ad-Dajjal without studying the true Messiah, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, in order to spot the knot, as we call it. Now, part of the deception, the hadith in Abu Dawood and other books as well mentions that the Dajjal will give you a river, and those who take the river will get a fire. What do we call this? Deception. Now, all these examples, and because of time, all these examples show just by the Prophet ﷺ calling him a Dajjal lies the very nature of his mission and objective, which you will find as a linguistic consistency and a technical consistency throughout the books of ahadith that discuss the subject. So what you see is not what you get. And the moment you tune yourself in to the frequency of what you see, then in reality it will lead to a lot of problems. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala safeguard us all, inshallah. Khair. Very quickly now, moving on to the next part, which is Dajjal as a person. And this is very, very important. And we'll show you towards the end some of the objections and viewpoints of other people pertaining to the subject. The first thing that we must say is that Dajjal will be a Jew. But we must clarify that even the Quran says that not all Jews are bad. Minhum as-salihun. There are righteous ones amongst them. And just like how if a person in the Islamic attire goes and bombs up a local community store, we would not like everyone to be called as a terrorist. So too, we should not say that all Jews are bad. The Quran said they are righteous ones. And inshallah, if you study the seerah, you will see the righteous ones accepted the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But how do we arrive at the conclusion that Dajjal will be a Jew? Now, without going through the lengthy details and narratives, I said to you, the Prophet ﷺ came with the language of Arabic. People ask why. The Quran has been sent not just for the transformation externally and internally, which you cannot reach without reading, without pondering, without deep contemplation. Every word in the Quran is there for a reason. It cannot be substituted with a different word. Okay? Now, when we study just one word consistently from the root in Quran and its consistent movement in the hadith, just on that one word as what we call a clue or a breadcrumb from the Hansel and Gretel stories, which was left by the Prophet ﷺ to lead us on the quest of unraveling the ethnicity of Al-Masih ad-Dajjal, and that word is what? In order to get to the word, we go to the textual evidence. Now remember, in providing evidence, we have textual evidences and then we have the intellectual. We always start methodologically from the text. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, and remember when Jesus, the son of Mary, said, O children of Israel, I am the messenger of Allah sent to you, confirming the law which came before me and giving the glad tidings of a messenger to come after me, whose name shall be what? Whose name shall be Ahmed. Subhanallah. One word. One word. Now, who is speaking? Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Who is his audience? The Quran gives us the audience. Who are they? All children of? Who are what we call today? Jews. So Nabi Isa alayhi salam gives the message that this final messenger's name will be what? Ahmed. He didn't say Muhammad. But you think Isa alayhi salam didn't know? Huh? He said Ahmed. And a person of Jewish descent conveys the message to the Jews that this will be the final name of the final messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now keep that word in mind. Ahmed. Let's look at the consistency. Sayyidina Hassan bin Thabit radiallahu anhu, the famous poet of the Prophet alayhi salam, we know he was Ansari. And obviously when the message of Islam came to him, a lot of things began to make sense. In Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, it is mentioned that one day he was recollecting when he was a boy of 7 to 8 years old. And he mentions that some high-ranking Jews in Medina, a leader of the Jewish people, stood up on a rooftop of a house. And he gathered the Jews together. And he said, woe unto you all, because tonight the star of Ahmed has fallen. The star of Ahmed has fallen. And subhanallah, the great poet Imam Ahmed Rida, he has mentioned this narrative when he said, Subh tayba mein hui, batitahe baranur. So he's speaking about the birth of the Prophet alayhi salam, but giving us direction to this incident. So a Jewish people telling the Jews the star of whom? Ahmed, not Muhammad. So we see now that the message that the Jews got is that his name will be Ahmed. Okay, let's bring more corroboratory evidence for this. Again, in Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, other books as well, we know when the Prophet ﷺ beloved mother, Sayyida Amina radiallahu anha, she got ill on the way back from Medina. She passed away at a place called Al-Abwa. What we don't know is that Ayman radiallahu anha explains that on the way she was met by two Jewish men who had seen the signs of prophethood on Muhammad alayhi salam. And then they said to her, let us examine the Ahmed. What is it? Let us examine the Ahmed, not Muhammad. So consistently again, the Quran explained that the Jews got the message of Nabi Kareem alayhi salam as Ahmed. We see the proof of this not once, but twice, recorded in the books of history, that they acknowledged him, particularly the Jewish people, with the name Ahmed. Now, where are we heading with all this information? At the top is a mountain in Uhud. And if you ever have the chance to go again, Pay attention to that mountain. It is the only mountain in that range that has a palace on top of it. You know what that mountain is also called? The mountain of Dajjal. Yes. If you go to the local taxi drivers and ask them to show you the mountain of Dajjal, they'll point to the only mountain that has a palace on it. That's not a coincidence. Now, on your right-hand side is an overview from Shaykh Google's maps on Madinatul Munawwara. The Prophet ﷺ said, Dajjal will climb Uhud and look towards Medina and will say to his companions, do you see this white palace? This is the mosque of who? Ahmed. And so just by the usage of the word Ahmed, we see that Nabi Kareem alayhi salatu wasalam has encrypted a clue of unraveling the mystery of the ethnicity of Al-Masih al-Dajjal, which is also corroborated through other explicit information, all through a single word. And subhanallah, never in the history, remember 1400 years ago, when this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ was cited, Madinatul Munawwara, Masjid al-Nabawi was made of what? Mud, palm trees, leaves. Could you have called it a white palace then? No. But today, with all the light, what do we say? It looks like a white palace. So that alone is telling us that the time is very near. We're not saying it's tomorrow, don't worry. There's still time, inshallah. From the intellectual evidences to prove that Al-Masih al-Dajjal will be a Jew. The Prophet ﷺ said in Sahih Muslim, Dajjal will be followed by 70,000 Jews of Isfahan wearing Persian shawls. Now, let's intellectually probe very quickly. Do you or can you foresee a future where 70,000 Jews will allow a man from Africa to lead them? An African, Asian, white, normal white. No. But if that man is a Jew, possibility? Yes. And so the Prophet ﷺ is telling us here that Dajjal will be followed by 70,000 Jews when we juxtapose the ideology of the Jewish people who only take their own in ethnicity as leaders. Means what? That in order for them to follow Dajjal, he will first and foremostly have to be what? Jew by ethnicity. Okay. So that's very, very clear. Dajjal as a person gone through. Again, I said due to time, right? The other point of note which was given to me is Dajjal is a hidden force. Unfortunately, this is a subject which we teach in our courses over many, many lessons. And to go into it now would be almost impossible. But it is very important, even with the image that we've placed there, to see him as a puppeteer. And a puppeteer is always behind the scenes. But we need to understand, what do we mean by behind the scenes? Is it possible for Dajjal to puppeteer the unfolding events from behind the scenes before his actual emergence? Part of that answer is now. The second part will become clear in the presentation and the discourse by our Hafiz. Now, in order to go through that subject, you cannot understand or begin to understand the subject of Al-Masih al-Dajjal as a puppeteer without going through the subject of time, dimension, and realm. Now, it's very difficult to explain the subject because the Quran focuses on the subject of time with particular detail. And we always say it's quite sorrowful that when we're rushing to go somewhere and it's time for Salah, we'll rush, we'll make takbir, we'll rap Surah Fatiha, and we read, if you read in 2 rakats, first rakat is what? Surah Asr. Second rakat, Surah Kawsar. You know, because the Shaykh said you must read one surah that's longer, the second surah must be shorter. So Wal Asr. But Wal Asr tells you that by the subject of time, Innal insana lafi khusr. Humankind is at a loss. That time that you're trying to make up here to rush through your prayer, Allah Azza wa Jal is in control of that time. But the subject of time and dimension and realm, we don't conform to the beliefs of people like Richard Dawkins and others as well, Stephen Hawkins, on the subject of the multiverse theory. We don't believe in that to that degree. Of course, our scholars of the past, Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi and so forth, rahimahullah, discussed the subject on a very different light. But in order to explain this without going into terminology and ayat because of time constraint, it's very simple. Allah Azza wa Jalla has constructed the earth in His infinite wisdom to be designed in such a way that within the earth exists the concept of dimension and realm. Now, we're not talking about aliens, huh? No, we're not talking about interdimensional travel between, no, we don't believe in all that, which is what the New Age era believes in. But a simple way of understanding it is this. Right now, there are angels here, correct? If you can see one. But we know, right? Kiraman. So for every person here, multiplied by 2. But can you see them? But they're here with us because we're on earth, unless you're somewhere else. We're on earth. But Hadith Jibreel explains very, very beautifully, we don't have the time, the concept of interdimensional travel between the makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Jibreel alayhi salam comes into the dimension and realm of humankind in the form of a man. And what does he do? Before, when he was in his realm, we couldn't see him. We couldn't hear him. He was intangible. But when he enters the realm of humankind, Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab saw him. He described him. He heard the questions. And subhanAllah, for many years I could not understand why he sat knee to knee with the Prophet ﷺ, also to show tangibility. That when he touched knee to knee, he had to conform to the laws of the realm of humankind. So angels exist within the realm of humankind, but we see with one eye. The jinn. Ladies, don't worry. Read your Ayatul Kursi, inshallah. Whenever we say jinn, the sisters quickly cover their hair. I think the men should say it more often at home. Khair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Satan and his tribe see you from a place where you cannot see them. So now Allah Azza wa Jalla is also showing us a second dimension of space where we as human beings can be viewed, but we cannot view. Okay? Then of course, the realm of humankind. But alas, we are seeing with only one eye. And so real eyes realize the real eyes. Because if you see with that particular eye, then truth becomes very, very clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the heart can see, and you can go and do your research. And this is why even in the English language, we have allowed the prefix of in into the word sight, insight, which we call internal sight. And that is why spirituality is the key to seeing with the inner eye, the eye of the heart. And alhamdulillah, it is only our tradition that teaches the concept of spirituality. No others. All others are rejected, okay, or rejectors of the concept. Khair. In the end, of course, I've only got about 5 minutes or so. Dajjal is a socio-economic, socio-political phenomenon. Now, this on its own is a few lectures. So, we can't do much justice, and I'm very grateful. Hafiz have said overview. It takes a lot of stress out from myself here. Now, Dajjal is a socio-economic, socio-political, and the actual word is phenomenon. Because we cannot explain. You can go to any part of the world today through globalization and social media, marketing, and of course, in the pursuit of wealth. There is no more culture that remains 100% true to its origin. No way. That is a phenomenon. It's never happened before. We're living in that time now. But as I said in the beginning, the question, is Dajjal a system or a being? And the reason we bring this is because under the subject of a socio-economic, socio-political phenomenon, there are a lot of truth seekers out there, a lot of conspiracy theorists, a lot of Muslims who get caught in conspiracy my only advice, and I'm not really in the position, there are great ulama here, but in my experience, you do not take a story that you see in the news and you try to make the Quran bend to that. No. The Quran and Sunnah is at the forefront. Your story and your theory must fall in line with the Quran. Otherwise, you can be deemed a conspiracy theorist. Is Dajjal a system or a being? Now, these are the four prevalent views. One view, some people say he will be a person only. So we reject the system. Others will say Dajjal will be a system only. And we reject Dajjal as a person. People, Muslims even, who say this. The other is that we reject both. Subhanallah. We don't believe in Dajjal. Why? He's not mentioned in the Quran. I'm a Quranist. That's what they say. Huh? So we don't believe in Dajjal. Then, acceptance of both. He will be a person and he will be a system. What is our understanding? Dajjal will be a physical being. However, in preparation for his emergence, his minions will construct a system to destroy religious consciousness, resulting in the prevalence of spiritual inertia, which will pave the way to embrace him when he emerges. In other words, Shaitan can see you from a place that you cannot see him. The angels can see you from a place you cannot see them. You will see when Hafiz Fuzail Soofie speaks the possibility of how this may exist. So Dajjal also, before his arrival, will be seeing as well, but that doesn't mean you can see him. And he will be manipulating what we call his minions. Mind the pun with the one eyes. And he will manipulate them to construct the system that when he does arrive, everything is what we say in a gold platter presented to him in order for him to continue with his mission. Now the question is this: does the Quran discuss a person with the political power to construct such a system designed to take the people away from Tawheed? Question number one. Question number two. Does the Quran discuss a financial institution which, because of its wealth, turned away from God? The answer: the Quran has been revealed as a book which reveals all things. You only have to look. Yes, it does. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you look at the top left on the red there, indeed Pharaoh and Haman and their armies were ever sinning. When we study Pharaoh and Haman and the concept of them being a force to be reckoned with Dajjal in the middle of that system, Dajjal's objective, if you study the hadith, will be what? To ensure the prevalence of godlessness. No God. What is the subject today? Seeing the Dajjal with how many eyes? Two. They want you to see the world with one eye. Which eye? The eye that tells you that only what you see is real. You know we say, and I say this in my courses, you know we say to people, well, the two of them are fighting there. What were you jumping for? You saw them? You say, no, seeing is believing. Don't we say that? No. If seeing is believing, then not seeing is disbelief. And did you see Allah? Did you see the angels? Did you see Jannah and Jahannam? That is an atheistic belief of godlessness and in their da'wah. So the objective is the prevalence of godlessness, but the method is deception. Know the objective, know the method. At the top we have Pharaoh, bottom left Haman, and them as a force. So, very quickly, the Pharaoh. If we study his life, what did he say? Ana rabbukum al-a'la, I am the Lord, Most High. Even though he knew that he was not. And so now we are living for the first time in our history, when people are moving away from the concept of belief in God. It's now in science we trust, not God. Science is the God of today. Unfortunately, I wanted to put a video in, but it was too long, about 11 or 15 minutes, and that would have given you an ideal perception or viewpoint of these people who believe in science They are more brainwashed than the brainwashed Muslim extremist terrorists. Yes, they are. But then they tell us that we are the blind people. So Pharaoh represents the concept of political godlessness, while Haman represents materialism. And this materialism through wealth, through desire. Unfortunately, we cannot see the pictures there, but if you study Haman, his destruction came from the desire and need for the dunya. Similarly, today, unfortunately, Muslims reading Salah, we have detached ourselves from brothers and sisters and family because of little things, because of money. He owes me this, he took my car, no more. I don't want to go for his janazah. These are all the detrimental effects of materialism in its own da'wah and form. So Dajjal as a socio-economic, socio-political, socio-cultural phenomenon is a very deep subject which unfortunately we don't have much time. The methodology employed is through politics, media, education, banking. Banking, why? Because of the concept of money. If you understand the banking system, you will see, if you see with two eyes, you will see something else. In politics, you will also see the reality that this whole show that you're watching, these political races, no, that's not really what's going on. You need to have the ability to see with how many eyes? Two, to see the reality. Education. Do you know that only in this year, they have, according to me, and we are the Islamic License Solution is a small organization. In only this year, we've had at least 15 Muslim families who have said that their children are now considering atheism. Why? Education. Because education is giving them what they call proof. And with Islam, we don't have the proof, as we call it, right? So these are problems. The media is the biggest role player in the deception of Al-Masih al-Dajjal, the biggest role player. Again, we can't see the little image there quite clearly, but you never ever take on face value what the media gives you. It's almost impossible. And media doesn't only mean that. These WhatsApp broadcasts that you get, we just take it and we forward it. How many of us have verified? The Quran commands us to verify information. Otherwise, you are part and parcel of spreading slander and suspicion and all these things. Now, Al-Masih al-Dajjal through the media, and inshallah, probably in December, maybe I'll speak with Hafiz again. We were planning on doing something like this to show you occultism and Satanism in Hollywood and Bollywood. For our youngsters to see what is really happening, what is the true message for all these things that we go crazy about, that we go, as they say, gaga about. Khair. So the art here and the format and the method is deception. If you would like more information on the subject, then you can log on to this website, the beginning of the endnet.wordpress.com, and inshallah, the book which will be available after at the back, inshallah, by some of our brothers who are helping us. This will allow you to understand a bit better. It's minuscule as far as the subject goes. Hafiz said as well, it is too in-depth. No any one person can possess the knowledge of this subject, which was bestowed upon us by Rasulullah sallallahu. If anything good has been achieved, the praise belongs to Allah, the faults belong to me. Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbi wa atubu ilayh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والله تعالى في شأن حبيبه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما تحب وترضى بأن تصلي عليه بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإنه لعلم للساعة فلا تمترن بها واتبعون هذا صراط مستقيم صدق الله العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Most respected ulama, my respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Shaykh Faheem has just given you an introduction to Masih al-Dajjal as a person, Masih al-Dajjal as a system, and the system which props up the idea and the concept of Masih al-Dajjal, and his impact in terms of history and his overarching influence in terms of world events and world history itself. I'm going to go back into the ahadith and give you a narrative in terms of past, present and future, inshallah ta'ala. A group of 30 people from the Bani Lakham and the Bani Judham tribe embark on a trip to another part of the world. While they embark on this journey, for plus minus a month, because of inclement weather, because of very heavy weather, their ship is tossed about from end to end, from pillar to post, literally. And for 30 days, the ship travels across seas in such tumultuous weather and such stormy weather that the boat is rocked to and fro for 1 month. Eventually, it subsides. And when the storm subsides after 30 days of travel, the people who are in the boat or the ship of about 30 people then get onto a side boat, a smaller boat, and they start rowing towards an island because now they want to find some place to relax and find some food and whatever it is. And they get onto the side boat and they start traveling and they start rowing their boat until they reach this island. They reach the island at sunset after 30 days of stormy weather. And when they come to this island at sunset, they are met by a person. The look of the person itself is enough to put them into fear, because the description is that this person has such long hair that you can't make out the front from the back and the back from the front, and you can't make out whether it's a man or a woman. So when they see this thing, they imagine first it's Jinn. It's not from this world, it's an alien. And they ask this thing, who are you? So that person says, I'm al-Jassasa. Interesting word. I am the spy. These people say that the look of this person alone was enough to put them into fear. And the person, when they saw this, because they could see these people were thinking that, this person was the devil or something, the person said, don't worry about me. Go to this monastery that is on this deserted island. There is someone waiting for you inside who's eager to find out some news from you. These people, because they were so fearful, left this Jassasa, right, with long hair that you can't make out the front from the back, and they proceeded to the monastery. One of them has the name called Tamim Dari. They go to this monastery, and in this monastery they are met by a very weird scene. It's already sunset, it's already night, and it's in the deserted island, nobody there. And they see a man seated who is shackled by the hands, and the shackles of the hands are around the neck. It's like this. And the feet are also shackled, and the hair is very long, and he's a very large person. So they ask him, who are you? And who is this Jassasa? Who is the spy? He says, don't worry about that. I want to ask you a few questions. This man now is asking them, the people, a few questions. And he asks them one simple question. He says, does the area called Baisan still bear fruit? Meaning, are there fruit trees in an area called Baisan? So the people say, yes, as far as we know, it's still bearing fruit. So this man who's shackled up by the neck and whose legs are shackled responds, he said, pretty soon there'll be no fruit in Baisan. Then he asked them a question, and he asked them, he says, tell me something. Does the Sea of Galilee that we call it today, or Lake Tiberia, does it still have water in it? The people said, there's plenty of water in it. He said, pretty soon the sea or the lake of Tiberia will run dry. And then he asked the third question. He says, are the springs of Zohar, of Medina, still being used to irrigate the land, and is there enough water in those springs? They said, yes, there's plenty of water in the springs, and it is still irrigating the lands of Medina. And then he asked the question, has the unlettered prophet appeared, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And they said, yes. And he asked, where is he? He said, he's gone from Mecca to Medina, Yathrib. They called it Yathrib at that time. And he said, what has happened? They said, no, he has subdued the people of Medina, has become the leader, and they have submitted to him. And then he asked them, have they believed in him? They said, yes, they believed in him. He said, it is better for them. He then they asked him, but who are you? He said, I am Dajjal. I am Dajjal. And pretty soon, I will be released. Now I'm going to do something and I want you to watch me. I'm following a sunnah of my Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because this mehfil today is inshallah ta'ala following in the sunnah of the Prophet of Allah. Because at the time of approximately Isha Salah, Fatima bint Qais narrated this entire story that I just told to you as she heard it from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the beauty part is every other narration of hadith comes from an Anas bin Malik and Abi Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This narration of Tamim Dari, of the entire issue of the island and all that happened there, was narrated by qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam qala Tamim ad-Dari. The Prophet of Allah ﷺ said that Tamim ad-Dari said this. So you must know how authentic the hadith is, because the narrator of the hadith from the one who narrated it is the Prophet of Allah ﷺ. You want to know authenticity of hadith? You do jarh and ta'dil. Is the rawi thiqa?